Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Bhagavatam. Last week we began talking about how Krishna met with the residents of Vrindavan, the Braja people, who had come to Kurukshetra during the time of a great solar eclipse. People had gathered over there along by the um, small lakes that had been created by Parshuram, the incarnation of Vishnu, and they had come there to purify themselves. So not only did Krishna go there with his family members from Dwarka to perform rituals, prayers, and purification, but also he invited the residents of Vrindavan. Now, Vrindavan is where he'd grown up as a baby. He'd been raised by Nanda and Yashoda, and all the residents of Vrindavan were deeply in love with him. So King Nanda and his wife Yashoda, along with all the residents of Vrindavan, packed up their stuff and came to see the two boys who they had raised and who had been their darling beloved, not only of theirs, but of the entire village of Vrindavan. While Krishna roamed the forests and fields of Vrindavan, during his youth, playing and tending to the cows, and along with his cowherd friends and Balaram, his brother, he stole the hearts of everyone in Vrindavan, in particular the young cowherd girls or gopis. And the gopis could not tolerate even a moment without seeing Krishna. Then, at a young, early age, after all the wonderful times that they had shared, Krishna left Vrindavan to take up his princely duties. He had to do the things he had come to this earth for, which was to annihilate the troublemakers, the miscreants, and to give pleasure to all the devotees that were there. So many of the devas, the demigods, had taken birth in the families of devotees, not only in Vrindavan, but also in the Yadu dynasty. So to meet with them and relate to all of them, he had come here. Of course, the gopis of Vrindavan, the women, and as well as his parents and all his friends were devastated, and they longed day and night for his return. When Krishna left Vrindavan, he was a young boy. I think he was around 11 years old even. And he had promised to return very soon. But now a long time had passed. Maybe even 100 years. We don't know exactly. I don't have the exact numbers, but that's an approximate figure. The Mahabharata battle had not yet begun, and this was some time before that. So out of intense spiritual love, all the residents of Vrindavan had come for this golden opportunity to see Krishna again. It was this most ecstatic, exciting opportunity and this exciting time. Now Krishna had become a king. He had his own capital, Dwarka. He had 16,108 wives, and they felt very small. They were from a tiny village. When Krishna and his family came to Kurukshetra, they arrived on chariots and elephants and horses, golden, resplendent, and the residents of Vrindavan came on humble ox carts. Their only desire was to see Krishna and Balaram, who were their life and soul. At Kurukshetra, the residents of Vrindavan were warmly welcomed by Krishna's family, the Yadus, who were their intimate friends and relatives. Inquiring about each other's well-being, everyone cried in jubilation while their smiling faces bloomed like lotus flowers. Both parties were great devotees of Krishna, and their talk turned around him. The Yadus, despite their regal opulence, as Krishna's family, despite their regal opulence, had no interest in wealth or piety. In all their duties and activities, their sole object of devotion was Krishna. But the same was true of the residents of Vrindavan, Nanda and Yashoda, King Nanda and his wife, who had raised Krishna. Their affection was so strong that despite hearing Krishna being praised by the assembled kings as the omnipotent and omnipresent Supreme Lord, they could only think of him as their little child. And this is the effect of Yogamaya. Yogamaya is that energy that facilitates Krishna's pastimes. Maya, Mahamaya, is the energy that facilitates our illusions in this world, where we think that this is me, this body, this mind, my thoughts, my experiences, my emotions, this is me. And that is the grand illusion we live under. We think this world is real. We think that everything that is here is important and pressing and urgent and it's problematic and we got to solve it and we've got to somehow find the right partner and get the right job and buy the right things and be happy ever after. But it never happens to anyone. No one lives forever and no one is happy forever. In fact, whatever happiness we get is fleeting. Whatever satisfaction, whatever pleasure we get here is momentary. So when the residents of Vrindavan came, I'm summarizing what I've actually talked about last week, but I just want you to have the context because everything will flow from there. So when they first met with Krishna and Balaram, Brijbasis, they took Krishna and Balaram aside to talk, and they placed the grown Krishna and Balaram on their laps as if they were 8-year-olds. To them, Krishna was always going to be a little boy. The gopis, the girls from Vrindavan, to them, Krishna was their paramour. He was their beloved. He was their sweetheart. He was their love of their life, their soulmate, whatever word you want to give it. But he was their everything. The gopis were overjoyed to see Krishna again. Krishna was wearing the formal attire of a prince, and he moved in the company of military officers. Drawing Krishna away from the crowds, the gopis requested him to return with them to Vrindavan. Vrindavan was quiet. It was a little village, they pointed out, with beautiful streams and flower gardens. You could hear the buzzing of bees and the chirping of birds. Unlike in big cities, Krishna wouldn't need to dress up in all this finery or take part in all these ceremonious matters. In Vrindavan, the gopis and Krishna could be alone together again. Of all the residents of Vrindavan, the leading gopi was Srimati Radharani. Radha, who is no different than Krishna himself. Radha, who is his eternal soulmate, who is sometimes referred to as the Haladini Shakti, meaning his pleasure potency. That being who can give the supreme being pleasure is none different than himself. But you see, think about this pleasure idea. We're all chasing pleasure. We're all wanting pleasure. Everything we do is for pleasure. Whether it's the food we eat, we want something that tastes good. Whether it's a person we're going to hang out with, we want that time that we spend to be fun and pleasurable. Whether it's a place we go for a holiday or whether it's the work we're at, we want something that feels good. In fact, there used to be a saying a while back, the 60s, if it feels good, do it. Well, that took people down a lot of really strange paths, including drugs and alcohol and all kinds of permissiveness. And it's not true that just because something feels pleasurable, we should do it, because there are different kinds of pleasure. There is pleasure which is, in the short term, feels pleasurable, but in the long term, gives you pain. There is pleasure which, in the beginning, may be hard, like if you exercise or if you do something like fasting, you do something that appears hard, or you work hard for your job or your business. It is hard work in the beginning, but it leads to pleasure in the end, something desirable in the end. So there's different kinds of pleasure. But the greatest pleasure of all is the pleasure you have when you associate with God. This is something most people don't know. They think being with God is some very reverential act. You have to bow down. You have to be very sincere. And that's all right too. But when you associate with God, there is a pleasure unlike any pleasure in this world. That is the pleasure that is experienced by the soul. You know, every other pleasure that we engage in is pleasure for the body or pleasure for the mind. The senses, when I say body, I mean the senses, right? Sense of touch, the sense of sight, the sense of taste, hearing, whatever it might be, music, all that. All that is pleasure for the senses. But there is a pleasure that is gained when you connect with God. That pleasure comes from Radha. When you chant his name and you do it sincerely and you do it with devotion, there is a pleasure in that. When you taste the prasadam, the food that has been offered to him, when you chant and dance his names and kirtan, there is a pleasure that is out of this world. Anyone who is connected with God, it doesn't matter what religion they belong to, anyone who has tasted the genuine thing knows what pleasure I'm speaking about. But the origin of that pleasure, the source of that pleasure, the highest form of that pleasure is Radha. That Radha is not only the source of all pleasure for all of us and for the entire universe, but she is also the source of pleasure for Krishna. She is the only one who can truly please him. And that is why her name is Radha. Aradhana. Aradhana means the one who is the worshipper of the ultimate worshipper of the Supreme Being. And she is his beloved and he is her beloved. They are one and each. They are two sides of the same coin. Anyways, so Srimati Radha had felt that now Krishna had been gone for perhaps 100 years. And these gopis, including Radha, could not bear separation from him for even a second. When they would see him in Vrindavan when he was a young boy, even the blinking of their eyes was considered too much separation. So that momentary second, like fraction of a second, where they could not see him, they cursed Brahma, the creator. Why would you create eyelids in front of our eyes and separate us from Krishna? He's there and for that momentary second, we're not able to see him. Those gopis, that Radha, those Brijvasis, residents of Vrindavan, had been separated from him now for 100 years. You can only imagine the level of pain and sadness and grief that they suffered during that time. The leading gopi, Srimati Radharani, had felt the pangs of separation from Krishna more than anyone else. The gopis saw their beloved Krishna at Kurukshetra after a long separation. They secured and embraced him in their hearts through their eyes, and they attained a joy so intense that even the most perfect self-realized beings, the most perfect yogis, cannot attain it. Radha requested Krishna, "My dear Krishna, you are the same Krishna. I am the same Radha. We are meeting, but we are not meeting in the same place. Here you are like a royal king with chariots and soldiers, with your ministers and secretaries. But there in Vrindavan you were a cowherd boy, and we used to meet in the jungles, in the bushes. I want to take you there. Then I will be happy." Krishna regretfully explained that he could not yet fulfill their request. He still had much to do in this world. Much was still to happen. The entire battle of Mahabharata, so much was going to still happen. It had not yet happened. So he had to say no. But this was in their heart, the heart of all the gopis. And they wanted to take Krishna back with them to Vrindavan. However, Krishna did spend 3 months with his dear childhood family and friends and later on returned to Dwarka. The gopis forever, however, aspired to have him come with them. They longed to tow Krishna on his grand royal chariot. They wanted to pull his royal chariot, pull him down the road to Vrindavan. This is the esoteric meaning behind the festival known as Rath Yatra, or the festival of the chariots. This is the scene in Jagannath Puri, place in India where literally millions of people gather every year to pull the chariots of Jagannath. Jagannath is a form of Krishna. This is a very special kind of deity form. Jagannath, his brother Krishna, and Subhadra, the sister. A very special form of Krishna that exists in Jagannath Puri and now by the grace of Srila Prabhupada all over the world. Very merciful form of Krishna. Now, you will see these Rath Yatra programs that are put on by the Hare Krishna devotees all over the world. And you might have witnessed them. You see the chariot being pulled there. So that festival is held, and that symbolizes the desire of the gopis to take Krishna back with them to Vrindavan, to where he'd grown up. And that's what that celebration is about. You'll find this all over the world. Hare Krishna devotees having this particular celebration on the glories of Kurukshetra. And here Krishna is worshipped as Jagannath. Jagat means the world and Nath means master or proprietor. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. It's Bhagavad Gita chapter 5, text 29. I am the proprietor of all the worlds. Therefore he is Jagannath, the proprietor of the universe. All the planets and all the galaxies and all the solar systems throughout the physical world as well as the spiritual world. So the Vrindavan inhabitants went to see Krishna because he was their life and they did not know anything except him. Sri Krishna, the master of the gopis, their guru, he was their everything, and the purpose of their life showed them his mercy. It's very interesting, the word used here is Guru Gatihi. Guru means spiritual master, and Gatihi means goal. So he was their life purpose, and he was their teacher. He was teaching them the ways of love. That is what God does. He teaches us the ways of love. He's not there as a punishing God. He is there as a loving God. And he shows by his example what pure love is. We all long for that. We want to find the one, the ultimate, the greatest love of all. But that ultimate love is God. Because every human will fall short. Every human has flaws. And no human will live up to our soul's desire for this perfect love. That soul's desire is only met when we connect with God, with Krishna. And so he teaches us the ways of love. Radharani actually teaches us the way of love, Radha. And that is why she teaches us how to love Krishna. So here it is said that Krishna is the guru, and he's the spiritual master, and the goal, the teacher, and the object, the destination. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, however, points out an additional meaning. While Krishna is the goal for all spiritual seekers, for the gopis specifically, he is the goal which is guru, which is predominant, in the sense of completely eclipsing the significance of all other possible goals. I want you to consider this very powerful idea. Is there a goal that eclipses the significance of all other possible goals? We are told by people, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you must know what you want in life. You must have a desire so big that you can attain great things. But what is the goal of all goals? Ultimately, these goals that we have in this world are to get us fame, to get us wealth, to get us happiness, to get us all these things, which ultimately we leave behind when we die. So they cannot be the goal of all goals. What is the ultimate goal of life? The goal beyond all these temporary and transient goals. What is that goal? That goal is that supreme Godhead, Krishna. Not because he is great, but because within him lies everything we have ever desired. He is the fulfillment of all our desires. He is the fulfillment of all our knowledge. He is the fulfillment of all the happiness that we would ever have wanted. You see, the pursuit of happiness is not to be found here in this world. It is to be found with him. Krishna then met with Yudhishthir and all his other relatives and inquired from them about their well-being. Feeling greatly honored, King Yudhishthir and the others, freed of all sinful reactions by seeing the feet of the Lord of the universe, gladly answered his inquiries. See, they were freed of all sinful reactions just by seeing Krishna. Just by seeing him. What is another way you can associate with him? See, when you associate, like think of it like this. When an iron rod is put into fire, it becomes like fire. It acts like fire. It will burn. Similarly, when we come in association with either Krishna's pure devotee or Krishna himself, then we become purified. We become Krishnized. We become filled with his energy. And that energy then transforms us from within. So that energy then cleanses our heart. It cleanses our mind. It cleanses and purifies our karma. It purifies our sinful reactions. It changes our personality. It changes how we see the world. It changes everything about us. How can you come in touch with that? You don't even, it's not that he has to personally stand in front of you like Yudhishthira and others. They had the great fortune to be able to see Krishna face to face. But we too have that opportunity. Even though he is no longer present before us in this world, we have that opportunity by being able to see his deity form in the temple, or by chanting his name. Even just saying the name Krishna means you are associating with him, because his deity form is no different than he, because his name is no different than he, because the talks about his pastimes like you're listening to right now is no different than he. Everything about him is the same as himself. We cannot say that about us. My shoes are not the same as me. My clothes are not the same as me. My car is not the same as me. There is a difference. But when it comes to God, when it comes to that supreme being, everything about him is none different than the thing. So his flute is no different than him. His peacock feather is no different than him. His pastimes, his leela, his name, everything about him is none different than him. It is entirely spiritual. And so when you come in touch with any aspect of him, or even his pure devotees, or his pastimes, or his books, you are then purified. And you will feel it. You will feel this rising of beautiful energy within you. You will feel it like a shift in your consciousness. There is no other way to describe it except that it is pure bliss. You're experiencing eternity here and now. You're experiencing Sat Chit Ananda, eternality, bliss, and knowledge right here, right now. That's what happens. So this is what Yudhishthira was experiencing. He was feeling, just by seeing Krishna, he was feeling freed of all sinful reactions. He then said, "O Master, how can misfortune arise for those who have once, even once, freely drunk the nectar from your lotus feet?" This intoxicating liquor. Now, he's not talking about alcohol. He's talking about the nectar of Krishna's feet, that comparing it to an intoxicating liqueur, pours into the drinking cups of their ears, having flowed from the minds of great devotees through their mouths. This statement is also made in the Bhagavatam. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam. He says in the beginning that this Bhagavatam which you are now hearing has become even sweeter. Although it is the ripened fruit of the Vedic wisdom, it is like when a mango becomes ripe, there is an entire tree, and from the tree comes a mango, and when that mango becomes ripe, it becomes juicy, it becomes sweet. So even though it is the ripened fruit of the Vedic wisdom from the Vedas, it has become even sweeter because it has been touched by the lips of Shukadev, the great sage, the great devotee, who is now speaking and reciting it for the benefit of the world. You are getting to hear that nectar. And he says here that because this intoxicating liquor, this substance which you are hearing through your ears, but pours into the drinking cups of their ears, having flowed from the minds of great devotees through their mouths, it destroys the embodied soul's forgetfulness of the creator of their bodily existence. Who is the creator of our bodily existence? God. He has given us the opportunity to be here, to do whatever we want, to have the free will, to forget him, to remember him. Krishna says, I am seated in everyone's heart. And from me alone comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. You want to remember me? I will give you the facility to remember me. You want to forget me? I will give you the full facility to forget me. It's up to you. What do you want? So it destroys the embodied souls. We are embodied souls. Their embodied souls' forgetfulness. We are forgetful of the creator of our bodily existence. We have forgotten him. We have forgotten God. And so this destroys that forgetfulness. This wisdom, this knowledge destroys that forgetfulness, and it reminds us, it wakes us up to that which is most precious, and that which we have been hankering for all our life and all our millions of lifetimes that we spent even before this one. Then Yudhishthir continues, the radiance of your personal form dispels the threefold miseries of material consciousness. The radiance of your personal form. There's an energy radiating from Krishna, from his personal form. People think that this energy is only in some light out there, somewhere in some place. But he's saying here that the radiance of your personal form, Krishna comes here in his personal form. The Supreme Godhead comes here in his personal form. Krishna says, I come millennium after millennium in my personal form. He says this radiance dispels all the miseries that we experience. Threefold miseries he's talking about are miseries caused by the body, miseries in mind, miseries caused by other living beings, and miseries caused by nature. Pretty much that encompasses everything. This is what our suffering is all about. He says all of that, all suffering is dispelled. Just as dark as the sun dispels the darkness. In the same way, the radiance of Krishna's personal form dispels the threefold effects of material consciousness. And by your grace, we have become immersed in total happiness. Try and listen. These are the words of great saintly people. Shukadev, who is narrating it, Yudhishthir, who is experiencing it. Yudhishthir, who is the most powerful of kings, who was a pure devotee himself, and who was a saintly king. This is his words, his experience, that by your grace we have become immersed in total happiness. This is the effect of becoming Krishna conscious, of becoming God conscious. This is the effect. One must know a tree by its fruit. So you must know a thing by its qualities. Not because someone claims to be God, not because someone claims to be something, but by the outcome. And you will experience it here and now. It's not like you got to go to some heaven to experience it. You will experience it here now, provided you are sincere, provided you're willing to be receptive. If you close your mind, you'll receive nothing. And if your cup is full with your own thoughts and your own ideas, you'll receive nothing. Your cup needs to be empty. You need to be receptive. You need to be submissive. You need to be humble. Then, yes, he can fill your cup with all of this happiness that you've been desiring. Because he is Ananda, Anandamayo Bhyasa. Your knowledge is indivisible and unrestricted. There is no flaw in that knowledge. By your Yogamaya potency, you have assumed the human form for protecting the Vedas. So you appear to be like a human being. You appear to us like you've taken a human form. But no, Krishna never takes a human form. We are made in his image. We are designed around him. But he comes here and we think he's taken a material body like we have, but he doesn't come in a material body. He comes in a spiritual body. That's why no one's able to kill him. Right from the time of his childhood, when he was a baby, from the time he was born, all the way across, so many different beings tried to kill him, but they couldn't. Why? Because they can't. It's not possible. You can't put Krishna on a cross and kill him. You can't. You can't kill him. Ultimately, when he leaves the world, he leaves by his own wish. There'll be a time, we'll come across that, where he dies and it's through the arrow of a hunter, which comes. But there's part of a prediction and a forecast, this thing that was supposed to be, as the time for him to leave, everything has been wiped out, it's time for him to leave, so he creates an excuse for that to happen. Nobody dies with the arrow going into their foot. So, so when Krishna wants to leave, he sets up things in such a way. Until that time, no one can touch him. You have assumed the human form for protecting the Vedas, the Vedic wisdom. And he says that. I come millennium after millennium. I come to teach this most secret of all secrets, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam, this most profound knowledge which he has imparted in the beginning of creation and then continues to make sure it exists on this earth. So even if you're worried that it may get lost, he will bring it back again. He will make sure that either he or one of his devotees will bring it back. In fact, if you'll notice, the Vedic culture has survived so many invasions by the Mughals, the Muslims who came and attacked India, by the British, 1,000 years of oppression. Still the Vedic wisdom survived. Why? That culture survived. Why? Because that is his will. We bow down to you, you who are the final destination of all perfect saints. In the purport it is written, simply by the effulgent light emanating from the beautiful form of Krishna, one's intelligence is purified of all material contamination. Thus the soul's various entanglements in this world are dispelled. How then, his relatives imply, can we ever suffer misfortune? We are always immersed in absolute happiness. See, there's relative happiness. Relative happiness arises from conditional things. Oh, when things go my way, I get a new job, I buy a new car, I get a house, I meet with a wonderful partner. I'm now happy for a little while. And then it becomes ordinary. And then sometimes those things what gave me happiness at one time can turn out to give me misery another time. So, it is such a thing that it is unpredictable, the happiness of this world. Whereas, he says, we are always immersed in absolute happiness. Absolute means that which never changes, that which is always so. That happiness, that is always happiness, that never changes from happiness to distress, that never changes its colors. It's always consistently happiness. That unconditional happiness, that absolute happiness, that is what Krishna stands for. So he says this is their answer to his inquiry about their welfare. As Yudhishthir and the others were praising Krishna, who is the crest jewel of all sublimely glorified personalities. A crest jewel is, when there's a crown and then there's this key jewel that is in that crown. So he says, as they were praising Krishna, who is the crest jewel of all sublimely glorified personalities. So whoever people may glorify, but he is the jewel, the crest jewel of all glorified personalities. while these men were talking, the women of Andaka and Kaurava clans, these were the different groups of people that were there, met with one another and began discussing topics about Krishna that are sung throughout the universe. At this point, Draupadi, the wife of the Pandavas, asked the wives of Krishna, this is the 8 primary wives of Krishna, So his 8 primary wives. Draupadi asked the wives of Krishna, please tell me how the Supreme Lord Krishna, who is imitating the ways of this world by his mystic power, came to marry each of you. So you know how ladies love to talk about these things. They love to find out, but how did you meet your partner? What was your story like? They want to hear the story. So Draupadi had never quite heard the story of each of them, and so she asked. So the first person to speak was Rukmini. And she said, when all the kings held their bows at the ready to assure that I will be presented to Shishupal, Krishna took me from their midst. So this is the backstory. Rukmini was supposed to get married to Shishupal. She wanted to marry Krishna, but her brother Rukmi was deadly against it. And he arranged for her to get married to another guy, Shishupal. And she was not interested at all. She was not having it. So she sent a letter out to Krishna. Krishna then came, and she says, he took me from their midst, from all the other princes who were gathered and all the people who were there, from their midst, as a lion forcibly takes his prey from the midst of goats and sheep. She's comparing all the others who were present there as goats and sheep. And Krishna is like the lion who comes and takes his prey from the midst of goats and sheep. And then she says, may I always be allowed to worship those feet of Krishna, the abode of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. Then Satyabhama spoke up. Satyabhama is also known as Jagat Sundari, world's most beautiful lady. She is Krishna Priye, beloved of Krishna, and is the incarnation of goddess Bhudevi, or goddess Earth. My father, she said, his heart tormented by his brother's death, accused Krishna of killing him. To remove the stain on his reputation, Krishna defeated the king of the bears and took away the Shamantak jewel, which he then returned to my father. Now, we've gone over all these earlier. I'm not going to go into any detail here, but just they're narrating in very short snippets their stories. So Krishna defeated the king of the bears, Jambavan, and took back the Shamantak jewel, which he then returned to my father, fearing the consequences of his offense because he had falsely accused Krishna. Her father offered me to Krishna, Supreme Lord, even though I had already been promised to others. Then Jambavati spoke up, and she said, my father was unaware that Sri Krishna was none other than his own master and worshipable deity. You see, Jambavan had been a great devotee of Ram. Ram, who was the husband of goddess Sita. And Jambavan had fought with him so because he didn't recognize that, he didn't know that Krishna was the same Ram, right? Ram had come thousands of years before Krishna. Jambavan had continued to live. He had been around for all that time. Now, when Krishna was there, he thought this is some other person, and so he went into battle with him because Krishna was looking for the Shamantak jewel. And so for 27 days they fought. She says, when my father finally came to his senses and recognized Krishna as his worshipable Supreme Lord Ram is the same as Krishna, he took hold of Krishna's feet and presented him with both the Shamantak jewel as tokens, with me and the Shamantak jewel as tokens of his reverence. You see, Jambavan, who you see kneeling there, had been Ram's servant many thousands of years before. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti mentions that while hearing Jambavati's story, the women present recognized her as the girl who Jambavan had once offered to Sri Ram. So Jambavati had been there with Jambavan, her father, at the time of Ram, thousands of years earlier. They had been living since even that time. She had wanted to marry Ram. And Ram said he has taken a vow to have only one wife, Sita. So he could not accept her then. But he said, I will be back in the Dwapar Yuga. And at that time, I will marry you. And so now, Krishna had come and he was keeping his word. The other queens, when they got to understand all this, wanted to honor Jambavati for this. And Jambavati replied, I am just the Lord's maidservant. You see, each of them had this absolute humility. Not that I'm a queen, not that I'm somebody great, not that I'm so fortunate that I'm with Krishna, not that I am, the favored one of God. No, I am just his maidservant. I am just here to serve him. And that humility is what Krishna looks for. He sees himself, when that humility is expressed, when someone sees him as, like he says, just a maidservant. You see, this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us. He said, we are all our Swarup, Jivera Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. We are eternally servants of God. All of us. Our Swarup, our original spiritual nature is to serve God. Just as our hand is part of our body and serves our body, our legs are part of our body and serve our body, our mind is part of us and is there to serve us, although unfortunately we are always serving our mind and our senses. But no, they are there to serve us, the soul. Not that we are here to serve them. And therefore our Swarup, our original spiritual nature is to be servant of God. So she's saying here, I am just the Lord's maidservant. Then spoke Kalindi, the daughter of the sun god of Suryadev, who desired to get as her husband the most excellent and munificent, compassionate, supreme Lord Vishnu. And for that purpose she had performed severe penances. She said, my Lord knew I was performing severe austerities and penances with the hope of one day touching his lotus feet. So he came to me in the company of his friend, that was Arjun, and took my hand in marriage. Now I am engaged as a sweeper in his palace. Now we also know that Krishna took such wonderful care of each of his queens. Each of them had their own palace. Each of them had their own maidservants, so many of them, in fact, that they had nothing that they lacked for. Yet they see themselves in this way. I am just his maidservant. I am just a sweeper in his palace. Then Mitravinda spoke. She was the daughter of King Jayasena, and she was very virtuous, beautiful, and noble. She said, at my Swayamvar ceremony, so Swayamvar ceremony is the time where the princesses, where they would literally choose their own husband, or sometimes there would be some kind of a contest, and the person who won the contest would be the one who'd get to marry the girl. Sometimes the fathers would set it up in such a way so that only the one special person that she was really interested in could actually win the contest. We'll come to that in a minute. So she said, my Swayamvar ceremony, Krishna came forward. He defeated all the kings present, including my brothers who dared insult him, and he took me away as a lion removes his prey from amidst a pack of dogs. He compares her brother and the other kings who were there as a pack of dogs. Thus Sri Krishna brought me to his capital city, Dwarka. May I be allowed to serve him by washing his feet, life after life. Then comes Satya. Satya said, my father arranged for 7 extremely powerful and vigorous bulls with deadly sharp horns to test the prowess of the kings who desired my hand in marriage. No one could defeat these bulls. Although these bulls destroyed the false pride of many heroes, Krishna subdued them effortlessly, tying them up in the same way that children playfully tie up baby goats. He thus won me over with his valor. Then he took me away along with my maidservants and a full army of 4 divisions, that's a few 100,000 soldiers, defeating all the kings who opposed him along the road. May I be granted the privilege of serving that Supreme Lord. Then Bhadra spoke up. She said, my dear Draupadi, of his own free will, my father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already dedicated my heart, and offered me to him as his bride. So this was her choice. She wanted to marry Krishna. She told her father. Her father said, okay. My father presented me along with an Akshahini military guard, and it's like a few 100,000 soldiers, and a retinue of my female companions. My ultimate protection is this. My ultimate perfection is this, to always be allowed to touch Sri Krishna's lotus feet as I wander from life to life, bound up by my karma. Srila Jiva Goswami comments that although in civilized society it is normally considered disrespectful, so when he says civilized society, this is Vedic society, it is normally considered disrespectful to publicly speak the name of one's guru, or one's spiritual teacher or husband. Krishna's name, however, is unique, because you notice they're all uttering Krishna's name. It's unique because the mere utterance of the name Krishna is considered as the highest expression of reverence for God. As the Shvetashvatra Upanishad says in chapter 4, text 19, Yasya nama mahad yashaha, the holy name of the Supreme Lord is supremely glorious. The name of God is supremely glorious. Then Lakshmana said, so Lakshmana was the other wife there, she says, O Queen Draupadi, I repeatedly heard Narad Muni glorify the appearances and activities of Krishna, and thus my heart became attached to him. My father, Brihatsena, was by nature compassionate to his daughter, and knowing how I felt, he arranged to fulfill my desire. Indeed, even goddess Padmahasta chose him as her husband after careful consideration, rejecting the great demigods who rule various planets. Just as a fish was used, now Lakshmana is kind of going to narrate her whole story, which we haven't heard up till now in the Bhagavatam, but in her enthusiasm to share, she's going to narrate her entire story. So she tells Draupadi, this is Draupadi, she was the wife of the Pandavas. So just as a fish was used as a target in your Swayamvar ceremony, that's when Arjun had to look down into a pool of oil and he had to fire an arrow upwards at a fish that was rotating. And he had to get the arrow into the eye of that fish. It's a very difficult challenge. So just as a fish was used as a target in your Swayamvar ceremony, O Queen Draupadi, to assure that you would obtain Arjun as your husband. You see, the idea was that the task was so difficult, nobody could achieve it except Arjun. And the king, knowing this and knowing that his daughter wanted to marry Arjun, set it up in such a way that only Arjun could achieve this task. And that's what happened. And that's how Draupadi got married to Arjun. And ultimately, all the Pandavas as well. So, Queen Draupadi, to assure that you could attain Arjun as your husband, so a fish was also used in my Swayamvar ceremony. In my case, however, it was concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in the pot of water below. So it was made even more difficult than it was at the time of Arjun. You see, Arjun is famous as the most expert archer. So the question lies, why then could Arjun not hit the fish target at Lakshmana's Swayamvar ceremony, just as he had done before to win Draupadi, because he was there? Srila Sridhar Swami explains the target at Draupadi's Swayamvar had been covered only partially so that a marksman could see if he looked straight up at the pillar on which it was placed. So one had to look up and then notice the fish that is rotating, look down in the pool of oil, and then from there, shoot. It was very difficult, but Arjun was able to do it. But in this case, To shoot Lakshmana's target, however, it was necessary to aim by looking up and down at the same time, an impossible feat for any mortal. Therefore, only Krishna could strike the target. Hearing of this, thousands of kings expert in shooting arrows and wielding other weapons converged from all directions on my father's city, accompanied by their military teachers. My father properly honored each king according to his strength and seniority. Then those whose minds were fixed on me took up the bow and arrow, and one by one they tried to pierce the target in the midst of the assembly. Some of them picked up the bow but could not string it, so they threw it aside in frustration. They have these heavy-duty bows that most people could not even string. Some managed to pull the bowstring towards the tip of the bow, only to have the bow spring back and knock them to the ground. A few heroes succeeded in stringing the bow, but none of them could find the target. Then Arjun looked at the reflection of the fish in the water and determined its position. When he carefully shot his arrow at it, however, he did not pierce the target but merely grazed it. After all the arrogant kings had given up, their pride broken, Sri Krishna, the supreme personality of Godhead, picked up the bow, easily strung it, and then fixed his arrow upon it. He looked at the fish in the water only once and then pierced it with the arrow, knocking it to the ground. Kettle drums resounded in the sky, and on the earth people shouted, "Jai, Jai!" Overjoyed demigods showered flowers. Just then I, that is Lakshmana, walked onto the ceremonial ground, the ankle bells of my feet gently tinkling. I was wearing new garments of the finest silk tied with a belt, and I carried a brilliant necklace fashioned of gold and jewels. There was a shy smile on my face and a wreath of flowers in my hair. In the purport, Sridhar Swami states that Lakshmana was so excited by remembering how she obtained the Supreme Lord that she forgot her natural shyness and went on to describe her own triumph. She said, "I lifted my face, which was encircled by my abundant locks and effulgent from the glow of my earrings, reflected from my cheeks. Smiling coolly, I glanced about, and looking around at all the kings, I slowly placed the necklace on the shoulder of Krishna, who had captured my heart." Just then, there were loud sounds of many instruments. Men and women began to dance, and the singers began to sing. The leading kings there could not tolerate my having chosen Krishna. Burning with lust, they became quarrelsome. Krishna then placed me on his chariot, drawn by 4 most excellent horses. Donning his armor and readying his bow, he stood on the chariot, and there, on the battlefield, he manifested his 4 arms. So in the purport is written that with 2 of his 4 arms, Krishna embraced his bride. And then with the other 2, he held his bow and arrows and fired at all these kings who were trying to attack him. Krishna's charioteer Daruk drove Krishna's gold-trimmed chariot as the kings looked on. They were like small animals helplessly watching a lion. The kings pursued us like village dogs chasing a lion. Some kings, raising their bows, stationed themselves on the road to stop Krishna as we passed by. These warriors were deluged by arrows shot from Krishna's bow, Saranga. Some of the kings fell on the battlefield with severed arms, legs, and necks. The rest gave up the fight and fled. The king of the Yadus, Krishna, then entered his capital city of Dwarka, which is glorified in heaven and on earth. The city was elaborately decorated with flagpoles carrying banners that blocked the sun, and also with splendid archways. As Krishna entered, he appeared like the sun god entering his abode. My father honored his friends, family, and in-laws with priceless clothing and jewelry, and with royal beds, thrones, and other furnishings. With devotion, he presented the perfect Krishna with a number of maidservants bedecked with precious ornaments. Accompanying these maidservants were guards walking on foot and others riding elephants, chariots, and horses. He also gave the Supreme Lord extremely valuable weapons. In the purport it is said the Supreme Lord is Purna. Purna means complete and perfect in himself. He requires nothing for his satisfaction. Knowing this, a pure devotee makes offerings to the Lord only out of love, with no expectation of material profit. See how people are in this world today? They always worship God just because they can get something out of God. But real bhakti, real love for God is about nishkama bhakti, where you have no material desire. Anya abhilashita shunyam. There is no material desire at all. The only desire is, how can I have you? How can I have your love? How can I serve you? How can I connect with you? That is the only desire of the devotee, of a pure devotee. Every one of us, otherwise, when there comes, we might say in the beginning, oh, I have no desire. Okay, I understand the concept, I understand the theory, I understand it intellectually. But when trouble hits our lives, or there is pain, or there is suffering, or there are problems, then we say, God, please help me. Right? Most of the time, we remember God only when there is trouble. Most of the time, we think of Him only when there is trouble. If you might believe these things, and even if you might understand these things intellectually, we have been doing this for so long, for so many lifetimes, that we keep going back to this same way of living. However, as we become purified, this is the goal, to come to that place where no matter what the circumstances, we don't expect anything material out of our service to God, out of our love for God. Yes, we need help in this world, and sometimes we do call on Him. But the pure devotee says, wherever you place me, however you take care of me, I trust you. Even if you take everything away, I trust you. I love you. Nothing is going to change that. So however you wish to treat me, I accept it. I accept whatever condition you place me in. You see the Pandavas, they've been talking about them over the last so many episodes. 5 brothers, king sons of Pandu, their eldest one being Yudhishthir. They were put through so much of difficulty. After this incident at Kurukshetra, they were banished for 14 years from their own kingdom, from their own palaces. Oh, and they had to go with nothing, no travel suitcase. No, nothing, just a set of clothes, and that is it. And they went. They went through so much of misery, so many attempts to kill them. Finally, a great big battle took place. But all of that misery, Queen Kunti, their mother, she says, give me more. Because when I am miserable, when I am unhappy, I remember you. I am such a foolish person that if it weren't for all these troubles, if it weren't for all these hardships, if it weren't for all these difficulties, I would never think of you. So please give me more trouble. Now, I know you and I may not be at the level of Queen Kunti, but these were her prayers, and these are the prayers of a pure devotee who is not attached to the stuff of this world. We still are. We still are involved. We still are attached. And it's important to be honest. But it's also important to have an idea of what pure love is like. And once you know that, you know what you're aiming for. That is the destination. That is the place we need to get to. We can't imitate it. We can't fake it. But we can strive for it. We can pray for it. We can put our heart and soul into that. God, please give me that quality of love by which I can capture you, by which I can truly love you the way you want to be loved. So on his part, the Supreme Lord, Krishna, happily accepts even a small gift of flowers or tulsi leaves and water when it has been offered with love. To him, it is not what you give him. You might give him millions of dollars. Because you got a lot of money, you give him a lot. What does he care? He owns the entire world. What does he care about your donation or your charity or your whatever you give him? No. If it is not given with love, it means nothing. And if it is simply a glass of water, a flower, a fruit, but it is given with love, that means everything to him. Thus, by renouncing all material association and practicing severe austerities, we queens have all become personal maidservants of the self-satisfied Supreme Lord. It's an important term to understand. He is self-satisfied. He is satisfied in himself. He needs nothing. The purport Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti states, Lakshmana, the queen, became embarrassed when she realized that she had been talking about herself, and so she spoke this verse praising her co-wives. In her humility, Lakshmana claimed that Krishna's queens, unlike ordinary wives, could not bring their husband under control, and thus they could relate to him only as servile housekeepers. In fact, however, since the Supreme Lord's queens are direct expansions of his internal pleasure potency, they're all expansions of his internal pleasure potency, Haladini Shakti. Now you might remember, who is that Haladini Shakti, that internal pleasure potency of Krishna? That is Radha. They are expansions of Radha. All these queens of Krishna, they are all expansions of Radha. Lakshmi, Parvati, all of them are expansions of Radha, of the pleasure potency, the internal pleasure potency, Haladini Shakti. And because they are expansions of his pleasure potency, Radha, they fully controlled him with their love. On one hand, they felt like he would do whatever he wants to do. They have no control over him. But on the other hand, he was fully controlled by their love. Now Rohini Devi, speaking for all the other queens, the 16,000 queens who had been kidnapped and then were freed by Krishna, she said, after killing Bhaumasura and his followers, Krishna found us in the demon's prison. So they had all been captured, 16,100 of them. Krishna found us in the demon's prison and could understand that we were the daughters of the kings whom Bhauma had defeated during his conquest of the earth. So this particular Asura, his name was Bhauma, he had been traveling everywhere, defeating the kings and taking away their daughters. All these young girls had been taken and he had imprisoned them. The Supreme Lord Krishna set us free, and because we had been constantly meditating upon his lotus feet, which are the source of liberation from material entanglement, he agreed to marry us, though his every desire is always fulfilled. He didn't need to marry us. It wasn't out of lust, and it wasn't out of greed, and it wasn't out of any of that. But we requested him, we loved him, we wanted him, we begged him, please marry us because nobody else will. We've been imprisoned by this Asura. Our names have been tarnished. Please save us. And so he married all of them, 16,100 of them. And then he gave each of them a separate palace and maidservants and help of all kinds. It's amazing. But only Krishna can do that. And when he'd go to see them, he would expand himself. There would be 16,108 Krishnas that would come out of the one and go out in all directions to go and meet with his different queens. And each of them thought that he is only with me. So Rohini says, we do not desire dominion over the earth, the sovereignty of the King of Heaven, unlimited facility for enjoyment, mystic power, the position of the Creator Brahma, immortality, or even attainment of the kingdom of God. We simply desire to carry on our head the glorious dust of Sri Krishna's feet, encircled by the fragrance of kumkum from his consort's bosom. His consort here again is Radha. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti tells us that the goddess of fortune mentioned here is not Lakshmi, the consort of Narayan. Goddess Lakshmi could not attain the direct association of Krishna even after performing extended austerities. Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, wife of Narayan, of Vishnu, could not have the same position as the gopis. She came to Vrindavan. She wanted to take part in the Rasa Leela dance. She was not allowed. She had to go and perform more austerities. It is said she is still in Vrindavan performing those austerities. She may one day be able to take part and be a gopi and love Krishna the way the women of Vrindavan loved him, with that pure devotion. So the Shri referred to here is the supreme goddess identified by the Brihad Gautamiya Tantra. Devi Krishna Mayi Prokta Radhika Paradevata. The word Radhika is mentioned, that is Radha. Radhika Paradevata. Sarva Lakshmi Mayi Sarva Kanti Sammohini Para. The transcendental goddess Radharani or Radha is the direct counterpart. She is the direct counterpart, meaning she is the equal of Sri Krishna. She is the source of all the goddesses of fortune, all the Lakshmis. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. So notice these words. She possesses all the attractiveness to attract the all-attractive personality of Godhead. Krishna is known as the fountainhead of attractiveness. His name, Krishna, comes from akarshit, which means to attract. So he is the all-attractive personality of Godhead. He is all attractive. He is so attractive that one who beholds him falls madly in love. You have no choice. Unless, of course, you have an evil heart. That's a whole different story. There were many who beheld him when he was here, and all they felt was envy and greed, envy and hate. Yes, if you are an asura, that's how you'll feel. A demonic person would feel that way. So Radha is the primeval internal potency of the Lord, she says. We desire the same contact with his feet. Now, again, we're back to Rohini. She says, we desire the same contact with his feet that the young women of Vrindavan, the gopis, and the cowherd boys, the gopas, and even the aborigine Pulinda women desire, the touch of the dust that he leaves on the plants and grass as he tends his cows. They are longing for this, for the dust of his feet, as it is in Vrindavan. Rukmini and her 7 chief co-wives considered themselves so fortunate in their relationship with Krishna as he appeared in Dwarka that they did not especially desire to see him as he is in Vrindavan. So here we're talking about the 8 primary wives of Krishna, which he first married before he saved these 16,100. But the 16,000 lesser queens, after hearing Uddhava describe Sri Radha's super excellent qualities, and we have gone over that in the past. Uddhava was Krishna's dear friend. He had gone to Vrindavan and he met with the gopis with a message from Krishna. Then he came back and he narrated his experience there. He stayed for a few months and he described how amazing the love of the gopis was and how amazing, even more amazing was the love of Radha. So when they heard that, these lesser queens, the 16,100, they became so attracted to touch the dust that falls from Krishna's feet onto the grass and plants of Vrindavan. They wanted to enter into that Vrindavan Leela, into the pastimes of Krishna as a young cowherd boy. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti indicates that some commentators give this as the reason why, after the Maushala Leela, these 16,000 queens were stolen from Arjun on the road by Krishna himself in the guise of 16,000 cowherds, who then took them away to Gokul. Now, this story is coming up. We're going to hear about it later, how after Krishna leaves this world and Dwarka is annihilated, then Arjun is given the task of taking Krishna's wives away to some place. Don't know the full part yet. Let that be revealed to us. But on the way, he is attacked, and the all-powerful, the amazing warrior Arjun is defeated by a bunch of cowherd men. But here it is stated that those cowherd men who defeated Arjun were actually Krishna himself, although he had left this world, but he came back, right, in the guise of those cowherd men and took away those 16,000 wives with him to Gokul. Gokul is Vrindavan, because they had been praying for this. They had wanted to experience what it's like to be with him in Vrindavan. Draupadi, the queen Draupadi, Krishna's sister Subhadra, and the wives of all the other kings who were listening, were all amazed to hear of Krishna's queen's deep love for him, he who is the supreme personality of Godhead and the soul of all beings. And as they listened, their eyes filled with tears. With that, we'll end for today. There's a lot more that happens in this Kurukshetra. There's a lot of words of wisdom that we're going to hear about in the next episode, the great sages that were assembled there and their teachings. So we'll hear that in the next episode. This is just a very, very profound portion of the Bhagavatam. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your presence, for supporting me. And if you're watching this later on, please leave your comments. If you have any comments right now or anything you'd like to say, I'd be glad to answer your questions at any time. Thank you. You'll find the entire series on my YouTube channel. You can just type in my name, Rohit Juneja, and you'll find it there in YouTube. The entire history is there of all the 127 episodes, I think it is now, of the Bhagavatam. All right. Thank you so much. Good night. Hare Krishna.